We are grateful to P.V. Surendranath sir for sharing their valuable insights and experience with us today. Your presence have been a great encouragement to all law students gathered here for this esteemed convention. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to invite our esteemed chief guest, Professor G. Mohan Gopal sir, to address us. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Professor G. Mohan Gopal sir.
Dear and respected Mr. Surendranath, Mr. Parthasarthi, Mr. Reddy, who was kind enough to pick me up at the airport in the morning and bring me here, Mr. Haider Ali, and Comrade Kranti, who has a wonderful name and lives up to it. And my dear friends and comrades and colleagues, it's a great pleasure and a great honor for me to be here today with you, and I'd like to thank especially Mr. Surendranath and Mr. Parthasarthi for giving me this opportunity. I also pay my respects to the Honorable General Secretary of the State Telangana AILU, with whom I had great pleasure to Mr. Reddy, with whom I had a great opportunity to learn from in a few minutes a number of things. Friends, many of us for many years have been trying to talk about the importance of our constitution, and without much success. People did not understand it, did not engage with it, dismissed it as something that was of no consequence. Today, the situation has changed, and I'm very happy that there is tremendous interest in understanding and engaging with the Constitution. But that requires a new way of understanding the Constitution, and a new way for especially young people to engage with the Constitution. You engage with religion from the heart and from the head. We need a situation where young people will engage with the Constitution in the way that generally in this country, not maybe in this group, but generally in this country, and also in this group, many of you, young people, you engage with religion. Constitution is not religion. Religion is not the Constitution. It's very fundamental. But I'm talking of the way in which we engage with a set of ideas. We deeply understand it. We engage it from the heart and the head. The heart and the head are actually only one. It's just a process of cognition. But we deeply understand it. We debate it. We live it. So there are many people who say Constitution is my religion, but they don't really understand what that means, and they don't even know what the Constitution is. But when you engage with religion, it's not that if you are from, let's say, the Christian religion, it's not that you know every word of the Bible. If you're Muslim, it's not that you know every word of the Holy Quran. Or if you are from the Hindu religion, it's not that you know every word of every important text. But even without knowing that, there is an essence of your belief that you understand. You engage with it. It guides you. Now, in India, not in other countries, the Constitution is not simply an administrative document. It has a very, very significant role. And today I think our effort is to understand the Constitution in this new way. So that we understand that it is, the Constitution is an institution that is central for the survival of our country. And how do we understand its essence? So this is the main topic I want to explore with you. I'd like, if possible, for this to be a little more interactive, that you can stop me and ask me any question. I can ask you questions and we can talk to each other. I'm not asking you for right answer. I'm just asking you to share your views with each other and with me. So don't worry about giving the right answer or the wrong answer. I want to begin with a personal example. 51 years ago, for most of the young people sitting here, it's hard to imagine that span of time, 51 years, more than half a century ago. How many of you are first year law students here? First year law students, a very large number. Yeah. Wonderful. I was in your chair 51 years ago. It seems like yesterday. Those of us who are a little bit older, I think I'm probably the oldest person in this room, but those of us who are a little bit older, they will understand that life goes by like this. And I was in Delhi University Campus Law Center, first year law student. Professor Madhav Menon was a young reader. He was one of my teachers in the first year. They're very distinguished teachers. Professor D.K. Singh, young Professor Upendra Bakshi, Professor Tripathi, Latika Sarkar, some of Professor Sarkar, Professor Tripathi and others did not directly teach me. Professor Menon was my direct teacher. But they were all in the faculty, very distinguished group of teachers. What is interesting is in the year 1973, when I was sitting in your chair, India was going through a tremendous constitutional crisis. Keshwananda Bharati had just been decided, where the judges said there is a basic structure, we will decide what it is. And basically judges subordinated parliament to the judiciary. In effect, the British concept is parliament is supreme. After Keshwananda Bharati, the Indian concept is the Supreme Court is supreme. It's Supreme Court. It asserted its name. We are the supreme authority in this country. Weeks after that, we entered law college. While we were in Delhi University Faculty of Law, imagine 73 to 76. Can you, any of you tell me what happened between 73 and 76? Declaration of the emergency. When we were in law students, the emergency was declared. In Delhi, Arun Jaitley was my classmate, in the same class. He disappeared from the classroom because he was arrested. We used to joust with each other because I was then, I was the second national president of the NSUI. And so our big rival was ABVP. So we were jousting with each other politically all the time. And it was the Congress that declared the emergency and arrested Jaitley and threw him in jail. Very difficult for all of us. Eventually, before the emergency ended, I resigned from the position of NSUI president because I could not reconcile myself with what was going on. And I've never gone back into politics since then. It was, that was a short and somewhat bittersweet experience with politics. But so we, in our class, emergency happened, and many others, many other prominent people, I'm not naming them, were in that faculty of law at that time. Later Supreme Court judges and top leaders of the country. So let me just get this. And then leaders of the political leaders of the country were being arrested, thrown in jail. Papers were being censored. People were afraid to speak. It was really it's all done through law. So someone shared a poster saying online saying slavery was legal. Thank you. Not now, later. Slavery was legal. Apartheid was legal. Emergency is legal. Hitler acted according to the law. He amended the laws. So a lot of bad things can be done through law. Stan Swami was arrested, thrown in jail because the only bad thing we know he did is he tried to protect the rights of poor tribals who were under trial prisoners. No other charge has been made against him so far. But everyone involved in arresting him formally in the legal process, arresting him, putting him in jail, keeping him in jail when he said, please don't keep me here, I will die. Denying him a sipper with which he can drink water. We've seen how Professor Sai Baba was treated. Inhuman is too soft a word to describe how he was treated. The cruelty, the barbarity with which these people were treated. Sorry? Oh, you know who Professor Sai Baba is? How many of you? Yeah, I think you're underestimating your students a little bit. But these are not students of my generation, because we just sat in this classroom learning the law when the country was being turned on its head. So we've seen how all this is being done legally. So there's a big problem there. Are we all training to be lawyers to kill more Stan Swamis and Sai Babas? Or are we going to become lawyers to protect their lives? And how do we do that? Right. So we were in this classroom. All this was going on. We graduated, we completed the LLB course before the emergency ended in 77. We studied constitutional law through this. Then ADM Jabalpur was decided when we were in the law school. Many other decisions, Royappa, many decisions. Very important decisions were decided during this period. But the crisis of the Constitution and the crisis of the Republic and the crisis of this country never entered our classroom. We were studying constitutional law, studying Chempagam Dorairajan, A.K. Gopalan versus Union of India. We were studying the Constitution while the Constitution was being attacked. It never entered our classroom. Because somehow, this is one of the 2 or 3 main points I want to make to you. Please understand the structure of legal education is designed to create, and I'll use a Hegelian and Marxist word, and a word Narayana Guru also uses, alienation. Aparatvam in Malayalam. Alienation. To alienate the lawyer from society. So when you're studying law, the first thing is to fight that alienation. Marx talked about how the worker is alienated from himself, from his product, from society. So legal education today is a process of alienating people from the constitution, actually, not just from society. Alienating the lawyers from the constitution, as it really is. How do we respond to this? This is your challenge. You will also find that as you are now sitting in law college classrooms, the struggle that is going on in this country will not enter the classroom. It's structured not to enter the classroom. And that's why I want to congratulate Mr. Surendranath, Mr. Patsati, Mr. Reddy and others for organizing such opportunities for you. We did not have it in 73 to 76. If they had done this in 73 to 76, they'd have been in jail by now. But even now, with the new Bharatiya Nyaya, we are all liable to be proceeded like under the correct, yes. I've spoken and written extensively about the Bharatiya Nyaya. It's on the internet. So the first point is, I welcome these kind of opportunities, but it is important for us not to be alienated from the Constitution and alienated from society. That's why we are here today. How to ensure that that is... For that we have to understand, we have to re-engage. We have been alienated through our education from the Constitution for years, not just now. We've never taken it seriously. It's been printed, it's just been a, one side of your textbook, sort of the cover page, the other side, the preamble is printed, we recite it, but we don't really understand it. Where do we stand today? After 73 to 76, you are the next batch that is comparable to our batch. After half a century, you are exactly in the same situation as my batch. Even worse. Because let me tell you, we have lost our democracy, we have lost our constitution. We are actually today living in a nascent Hindu Rashtra. Simply let us not be fooled by the absence of formal action to remove the constitution and remove democracy and establish Hindu Rashtra. In reality, in substance, today the challenge is not to save the constitution, but to rescue it, to retrieve it, to bring it back, to revive it, to restore it. Now, this is not just my view. Several independent international organizations, for example, a public university in Sweden, not a private university, the University of Gothenburg, Sweden, they have, you can find this on the internet, they have I would request you to go to the internet and find it. They have a project called Varieties of Democracy. V as in Victor, V-DEM for democracy, short for democracy, VDEM. University of Gothenburg. That project studies democracy. They have the largest database in the world studying. They define what is democracy, they look at the indicators of democracy, social, economic, political, and they gather data. And they have data covering 200 countries for 200 years. And they categorize, using a system developed by another independent academic process, countries into two types of democracy and two types of autocracy. The highest type of democracy is a liberal democracy, where there is economic, social and political democracy in the fullest extent, and that's called a liberal democracy. There are only about 18 or 20 countries that fulfill the indicators of that reasonably. There's levels of poverty, levels of social support, education, all this is available. The welfare state exists, all this support exists. Liberal democracy. Then there's electoral democracy, where you don't have a full democracy, but you have free and fair election. And the ruling person gets thrown out and somebody else comes in. That's called electoral democracy. India all these years was counted as an electoral democracy. On the autocracy, there are two types of autocracy. One is a electoral autocracy, where the ruler may change through election, not ruler for life. But the elections are not free and fair. So Singapore is an electoral autocracy. Opposition leader is in jail. He'll have cases filed against him. He will have raids in his house. If it sounds familiar, that's a pattern that we are following. Right? So no one will be able to really create an opposition party. They will paralyze you. But there will be election within these constraints. Very constrained elections, not free and fair. That's called an electoral autocracy. Then there's a closed autocracy like North Korea and so on and so forth, where it's one president for life and there is no question of changing him at all. That's closed autocracy. India has now been moved for the last 8 years from an electoral democracy to an electoral autocracy. The Economist Intelligence Unit, Freedom House, in the United States, several of these agencies, they say India is a flawed democracy, India is a partial democracy. There is virtually no serious, credible, independent institution that studies democracies worldwide that consider India a democracy anymore. We still think because it's an electoral autocracy, there are elections. Like in Singapore, people think they have a democracy. But there's censorship, there's all kinds of things going on there. But it's not obvious to them. So we all think we are in a democracy. The word democracy consists of two words, demos and kratos. Kratos means power, demos means common people. So democracy is not about just about elections. It is a system where power is in the hands of common people. That's not the case, certainly in our country. So, we have lost our democracy. According to the world, not according to me. There is a 1789 document, famous document called Rights of Man. Man doesn't mean male. At that time it means, now it was meant that way, but now we say humans. Adopted by the French National Assembly in 1789. Many of you may have heard of it, Rights of Man. Article 16 of the Rights of Man says, roughly it says, that clearly, but that's not enough. It must provide a basis for restraining arbitrary action by the government, by the powerful. It must protect rights. It must have checks and balances. Only then will you call this highest law a constitution. And that is why Article 16 in 1789 of the Rights of Man says, that country where these things don't exist, there is arbitrary action and no check and balance. When a Chief Justice asks God to decide a case, there is no constitution at all. So we've lost our democracy. Our constitution has been relegated to an ordinary law, which has the name constitution. North Korea has a constitution. Everybody has a constitution. Especially dictatorships have a constitution. Except that the dictator rewrites it whenever he pleases. In India today, one of our structural problems is that the legislature and the executive are controlled by the same entity, same political force, the executive. So the same political power controls the legislature and the executive. So we don't have real separation of powers between legislature, formal separation of powers, but not substantive separation of powers in India between legislature and executive. We can call it some kind of legislative merged two branches of the state in reality. So that means the only check actually is the judiciary within the state. And we've seen that the judiciary is also no longer independent. No longer acting independently. There are particular judges who are acting independently, asserting themselves, asserting their rights, but there are many decisions where to check following the ideology of constitutionalism, which is an ideology that power must prevail over state power. That's the idea of constitutionalism. So your generation has an even greater challenge than my generation. You've lost your democracy. You've lost your constitution. Only a Supreme Court of a theocracy could have issued the Ayodhya judgment. There are two ways we can understand the Ayodhya judgment. It is a wrong judgment issued by a secular state. Or we can understand the truth, which is only a theocratic state could have issued the judgment. Especially the addendum, the anonymous addendum. We know who wrote this. I think we all know who the author is, but not official. That I've really started to understand their value, and I think this is why we are now turning to the Constitution, because we've lost it. Isn't there a popular song saying, you know, if जो चाहे जितना पुकारो फिर नहीं आएंगे, right? There is a song like that, right? This is not my strong area, but I've heard that song, that once some people are gone, like your parents, no matter how much you call them, they will never come back. And it's true. You feel it when all of us, many of us in this room who lost near and dear ones, we know what it really means. That something is lost and will never come back. But we have a chance to get back the Constitution. I may not be able to get back my parents, but I can get back my Constitution. I have to, now that I value it, because we've lost it. That's why we are valuing it today, because at some level we realize we've lost it. But we have to get it back. It's like a challenge, let me bring back my parents. If there was a chance for me to do it, I would give my life to get them back. But there's a chance for us to get back our Constitution. Let us focus on getting it back. So let's engage with it. This is the introductory part of what I said. We are in a big crisis. We've lost our democracy. We lost our Constitution. We have to win it back. For that, the first requirement is we have to understand what the Constitution is. Like I have to understand what my parents really were. When I was growing up, I take them for granted. I get irritated with them. But then after they've gone, I understand who were they? What did they stand for? What did they do? What was their value in my life? Similarly, now we have a chance to reflect and understand what is this constitution, and it's a unique document. There is no other constitution in the world like this. So let me explain what the constitution is. Let me first ask you, what is the Constitution of India? Just any random answer. As I said, no right answer, no wrong answer. I want you to share the views with each other. Will anyone just get up and give me a sense of what you believe is a constitution or the Indian constitution? We can start at the back, because I know that those who sit at, there are two reasons why people sit at the back. One is they came late, and the other is that they want to give opportunity to others to interact. So they're always very good people sit at the back and in the front. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Highest law of the country. Very good. It's a view. It's a correct view. Any other? Highest law of the country. I've already explained from a legal point of view that all highest laws, they're all called constitution, but it misses the substance, which comes from the right of man, that it must protect rights and constrain power. It must be a document that places the rights of humans above the power of the state. Then only it becomes a constitution. But you're right, it is the highest law. Yes, anyone else? What is your understanding of the constitution? Any first year student? Yes, sir. It's a rule. One more answer. Yes, sir. 1 second. Give direction to how to live life. It gives directions how to live life. That's these are all wonderful answers. Yes, sir, in the country. All very correct answers. Yes, sir. Yes, very good answer. Legal document on the basis of which the administration is carried out. Now let me tell you my own understanding of the Constitution. And for this, very briefly, we have to understand the context in which the Constitution came up. The Constitution came up, as we all know, as a result of centuries of struggle, where many forces were at play in this huge subcontinent, massive subcontinent. Opposing forces were at play. There was violence, and there was exploitation and incredible poverty. Colonialism was part of that. So many dimensions of struggles which we don't have to get into. But we cannot understand the Constitution independent of these struggles. All these definitions we discussed could describe the Constitution of any country. So the first thing we must understand is that this Constitution was born in the womb of the struggles of the people of this country, of this subcontinent. And so we have to understand it in that context. And the quality of this subcontinent is there is extraordinary diversity. Political, social, economic, massive levels of difference and diversity, which means that the forces that were operating were very complex set of forces. Not in the relatively more simple way it happened in other countries. Regional, cultural, linguistic, religious, political, economic, some at levels of deep feudalism, some at levels of industrialization. All kinds of complexity. So in this context, these struggles were taking place, and the independence struggle resulted in throwing the British out, and then there was a consensus that we should have a constitution for India. And if you look at the preamble to the Constitution, the first words of the preamble to the Constitution, we understand its true nature. What are the first words? India. Go forward. We the people of India, 5 words. Next. Having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. And to secure to all its citizens, justice, equality, liberty, fraternity, and dignity, right? Unity of the nation, assuring the dignity of the individual. Now, what is very interesting about it is, if you look at the Constitution of Australia, you'll find that the Queen of England, according to the equivalent of the preamble, the Queen of India of England will by a proclamation unite the people of 5 territories and constitute Australia. And Australia was so constituted. But we say we the people, like the American Constitution. But there is a difference from the American Constitution. We don't say we the people having constituted India and secured to all its people justice, social, economic, and political. It's a very important difference. We say we the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India and to secure. So the Constitution of India is declaring the continuation of the people's struggles and giving it a focus. And that focus is, when no one could disagree, that struggle must culminate in a democratic republic. Republic means the rest, the thing must belong to the public, the people. So democracy and republic are basically synonyms. It's a democratic polity that you call a republic. So we must shape these struggles into a democratic republic, which must be socialist, must be secular, and must be sovereign. Should not be ruled by colonialists again. But when we say that we have solemnly resolved to constitute, you and I, we have decided to solemnly resolve to constitute, that means we recognize that we are continuing a process with a difference of giving it a focus and a direction. And to secure justice means we don't have justice. To secure liberty, to secure equality, because we don't have it. Therefore, I consider the Constitution of India as a site of struggle. Where we are providing a framework for these various struggles to come together and talk to each other and try to reason with each other and try to find a way forward with the non-negotiable principle of democracy, which Mr. Surendranath also very eloquently spoke about. So the Constitution has an organic, to use another word he used, an organic link with the struggles of the people of this country. Now therefore, if you look at this Constitution, you will find something else very unique in it. This is the genius of Dr. Ambedkar. Most constitutions in the world, take the American Constitution. Although this matter was intensely debated in the Philadelphia Convention, the slave found no place in that constitution. It was a constitution of the white slave owners. not a constitution for the blacks. And there had to be a civil war to open up that constitution for the slaves. Women had no place in that constitution. All men are created equal, said the Declaration of Independence. And that was also discussed. Why should we not give women equal rights? They still don't have full equal rights, even formally. That's why the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution is still pending after so many years, decades. So typically, constitutions reflect the victor's view. The one who wins, their view becomes the constitution. But Dr. Ambedkar provided in our constitution a space for everyone. That was his genius. I work with some scholars sometimes who from across the world who work on constitutions. And several of them ask me all the time, how did the Indian constitution have such a long life? Now you say it's gone, but it died at 75. How did it manage to survive so long? So I said, its secret strength and why we can bring it back is that it actually provides space for everyone. So you'll find a strong communist, Marxist influence when you look at provisions on workers' rights, workers' participation in management. You look at the distribution of the material resources of the communities shall be so distributed as to best subserve the common end. Mangled by the Supreme Court recently in the Private Property Owners Association versus Maharashtra case, separate topic. It has the centrist social democratic view of a welfare state. None of this fully, but there are some elements which will satisfy social democrats, which will satisfy communists. Although Ambedkar said communists are against the constitution because it does not do away with private property. That's correct. It does not do away with private property. He does not therefore say private property is good. He's just observing. Because his concern was, I want to give space to everyone, but these people feel that they have not had adequate space. Probably they're right. And so they're unhappy with the constitution. Everyone was unhappy with the constitution, which proves that everyone didn't get what they wanted, but got something. Then there is the social left view, which comes from Ambedkar, Article 38 says that the state shall promote the welfare of the people by securing as effectively as it may a social order, not economic order or political order, a social order in which justice, social, economic and political shall inform all institutions of national life. That's a social left view. That the purpose of the republic is to establish a new social order, right? And so on and so forth. So we have, and there are what I call, see in Iraq we know there was the phrase weapons of mass destruction, right? The false allegation that there were weapons of mass destruction. So I've argued that there are 20 weapons of caste destruction in the Constitution. And so social agenda, economic agenda, political agenda, there is a deference to cow slaughter in a very indirect way, in a very compromised way, brings it part of animal husbandry and so on and so forth. But the Arya Samajas and others were fighting for that. Now you cannot ban cow slaughter except for the purposes of protecting, for scientific reasons. So they found a way to merge that, partly because ironically, Gandhiji was very opposed to banning of cow slaughter legally, because he said that if you cross that line, his concern was Pakistan will adopt a law banning idol worship and destroy all the temples. So we should not make any law based on religious beliefs. And, so they had to compromise. So, but they had preventive detention. The right-wing people had provisions on preventive detention. There were restrictions. There was freedom, liberty, Article 19, but there was 19.1, 19.2. 19.1 was very good for the liberals. 19.2 countered that. So there was space for everyone. But within the space, this is the most important thing for us to learn, we also have space inside the Constitution. And it is that space that is sought to be destroyed. It's not that the Constitution doesn't have space for everyone, but the others are pushing us out of the Constitution. And if we are pushed out of the Constitution, we will not have space to engage in such discussions. We have no locus standi. We can't have such a discussion in North Korea, because there is no space for people to reflect on how the country should be organized. It's the first time in the history of the subcontinent that common people have been given a space in the Constitution. So the reason for us to engage in it, with it, is it is what gives us space, recognition as a citizen, recognition as a human being. Yes. Thank you, sir. Sorry you have to. I don't have a watch on me, so are we good on time, sir? Yeah. Please stop me, Mr. Reddy. Yes. Yes. Anyone feeling very hungry? No. Okay. So, so we have to say we want to engage with this because it gives us space. It gives us liberty. It gives us equality. These ideas are there. It doesn't mean, remember, the Constitution says we will strive for these ideas. It doesn't say because the Constitution is enacted, you have these ideas. You do not have these ideas. For the first time, common people have space to demand equality, socialism, secularism, right to religion, right to speech, freedom of speech and expression. All these Article 19 freedoms. Part 3 gives us space. And if we lose it, then we lose that space. So we engage with the Constitution because it is actually providing a live framework. A live framework for the social struggles that are actually happening in the society and are shaping our future. The Constitution doesn't make those struggles, but provides a space for that and provides us a basis to engage in those social struggles. Otherwise, we have no basis to engage as common people. We have, in this country, till before 1950, there's no equality, no freedom. So here is an institutional space being created for us to engage with the social struggles of this country. Now the question you have to ask yourself as students, which is a problem we did not have, but you have, is that we were, especially people of my generation, we were raised in a highly political atmosphere. That's why I got into student politics, and I eventually had the opportunity to become the national president of NSUI and so on, because we were all engaged politically, because we understood something which today's young people have been anesthetized from, that we have no future unless we engage in the struggle. It was very clear to us that unless we engaged in the struggles of society, we have no future, because this is a society. I was born in 53, only 6 years after independence. Fresh. The fascism that existed before independence was fresh in the air when I was growing up. And it was very clear that we have to build a different future. If not, we have no future. So, you must, when I say you must engage with the Constitution, I'm saying you have to engage with the social struggles of this country. And the Constitution gives you a platform to engage in that. It gives you the right voice, it gives you the right to speak, it gives you the equal rights to engage. But what you engage in through the Constitution is not the Constitution but the social struggle. But you have been raised on a diet much before the BJP came to power, even under the Congress regime, on a diet which depoliticized all of you. Now, I was lucky to be educated in Kerala, where we had a very strong left movement. And so it was tremendously political. There was one student suspended from some school in Uttar Pradesh, and we had strike in our college for one day to protest against that. Student solidarity. Today people are being lynched, beaten to death, because they are suspected to have, falsely suspected to have, a different taste. Or a different faith. Doesn't bother the students of our country. It's not our business. Because they wrongly believe, actually they don't. Some of them strongly believe that they can have a good future in this country without engaging in the social struggle. But I said only some of them, because most young people I meet, unfortunately today, their only aim is to get out of this country. They want to abandon this country. But I can assure you that there are too many Indians. You will not be able to find space outside this country. I've lived outside this country for many years. I worked, studied outside this country. I did my doctorate at Harvard University in the US. I worked in the US across 3 decades. I can tell you, and you know that from Trump, they are not eagerly waiting with red carpets and garlands to welcome millions and millions of Indians who were saying, look, India has no future, we will come and live in your country. Very few of Indians will have that opportunity. So you have no option, especially as law students, no option. You may recognize it, you may not recognize it, but you have no option except to engage in the social struggles, political struggles, economic struggles of this country actively from today, from yesterday, and use the Constitution as an instrument and a platform. So when I say you must engage with the Constitution as you engage with religion, I mean you must engage with the struggles of the people of this country. As you engage with the spiritual struggle when you engage with religion. What are you engaging in when you engage with religion? You're engaging with a spiritual struggle. That's only one part of social struggle. It is a part of social struggle, but you can't limit to that. You have to extend it to all aspects and all dimensions of the social struggle. And when our Constitution, why is our Constitution being taken away from us? Because they do not want people to engage in the social struggle, in the economic struggle, in the political struggle. They want a docile set of, it will never happen, a docile set of lambs that can be led to the slaughter. Why? Because the Constitution is the pipeline that connects individual human beings to social struggles. And that pipeline is being destroyed. Now the last part of what I want to just open up is, what are these social struggles going on in our country? that the Constitution gives us, and how does a Constitution give us an opportunity to engage with it, and the link between doing this and reviving the Constitution. How do we revive the Constitution? By engaging in social struggles and economic struggles and political struggles. Because when you do that, you are bringing the Constitution back. You're giving new life to the Constitution. Partly the Constitution has collapsed, its internal organs have collapsed, it is in the ICU because its organs are not being used. And so when we engage in our social struggles, as students, as young people, we will give lifeblood back to the Constitution. Because we cannot do it without invoking the Constitution. And then we will feel the pain of losing provisions of the Constitution that allow us to engage with that social struggle. There are many dimensions to this struggle. The social struggles, social, economic and political struggles that go on in this country. And there are two particular dimensions that I think we should focus on. One is and before that I'll just give you a small bit of data which I used only yesterday speaking to students in the political science department in Kerala University. And that is to compare, I was speaking to a program in the Kerala University on Latin American studies. And so what I did was, I compared Brazil, Mexico and Peru to Indian states because they have similar population. But I'll just take 2 minutes on this and it'll understand what kind of struggle we are actually engaging in this country. I said there are two struggles I want to focus on. One is a struggle against poverty and the other is a related struggle over the caste system. These are two. There are many other struggles, but I want to use these two struggles and show how the Constitution can help us to engage with these struggles and how vital they are for the future of this country and what is their nature. Brazil has a population of about 20 crores. UP has a population of 23 crores, so it's fairly close. The GDP per capita, we say we are the 5th largest GDP in the world. Right? As a whole, it's like Ratan Tata, the late Ratan Tata and his driver saying, between the two of us together, we have the highest income in the country. But if you look at per capita, how much is the driver earning and how much Ratan Tata is earning is a different story. So Ratan Tata will say, my driver and I, we are the richest two people in the world or whatever, right? Or in India. So I am interested in GDP per capita, where we are 144th in the world. Not 5th in the world, 144th in the world. GDP is how much do you produce? And the question is, what is the share of every citizen in that production? There we are 144th. We have one of the lowest shares of GDP that is produced in this country. So who is getting all this? Is going to the small oligarchy, to use Dr. Ambedkar's words, that rules this country. Dr. Ambedkar said when the British leave India, India will be ruled by an oligarchy. I'll come to this briefly in the last part of what I say. So Brazil has a GDP per capita. Brazil is not a socialist country now. It's not a equal country. There's a lot of violence, lot of dictatorship, a lot of dictatorial things going on, a lot of violation of rights. But amidst all that, 200 million people in 20 crores of people in Brazil have a GDP per capita of around $10,000 per person per annum. UP has a GDP per capita of $1,000 per person per annum. Mexico has nearly 130 million, 13 crores of people. Maharashtra has nearly 13 crores. Bihar has nearly 13 crores. I think And more significant than India overtaking China as the world's most populous country is that Bihar has overtaken Maharashtra as the second most populous state of the country. Mexico with 128. So Brazil with 20 crores of people producing a GDP per capita of $10,000. UP with similar population of 23 crores producing per capita of $1,000. Mexico with 13 crores of people, 12.8 crores of people, produces a per capita GDP of $14,000. Little bit more than Brazil, $14,000. Bihar produces with same 12.7 crores. Mexico is 12.8 crores, Bihar is 12.7 crores, $700 per capita, as against $13,000 in Mexico. Peru, with, this is a selfish, my own parochial point, I was speaking in Kerala, has 3.3 crores population. Kerala has 3.3 crores. Peru with 3.3 crores produces per capita GDP of $8,300. Kerala with the same population produces per capita of $3,300, much more than UP or Bihar, but still much less than 1/3 of what Peru is producing. Peru is not a wealthy country, it is not an industrial country, it's not a democracy, it's a struggling country. Right? India has a per capita of around $2,700 per annum, India as a whole. Last statistic. This is not available for the states of India, but if you take poverty level that this government has come up with, they've defined poverty out of existence. Starting with Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, who said you just need $1 a day or $2 a day or something. And so therefore there's no poverty anymore, because at that level, right? But the level that I want to use is a level of 18,000 rupees per month, which is a level used by the World Bank for defining the poverty of a higher level of income countries, because they're all trying to apply a definition of poverty for poor countries that will actually perpetuate people in poverty, because it's so low that you'll say, okay, you don't need any help, you're no longer poor, when they're actually poor. Now imagine a statistic of an income of 18,000 rupees per month for a family of 4. In my view, people who are below that are poor. Very large section don't even get that much, but if you're below that, you're poor. Today in India, the official statistics say India now has between 12 to 14% poverty. But if you apply this measure, you're getting 82% of the people of the country are below this level. 82%. There's another very respected independent survey institute called PEW, Pew Research. You can find interesting data on it in its site. On its site, it says 97% of people in India earn less than around 30,000 rupees per month for a family of 4. By any global standards, they are very poor. 97% of the people of this country. Now, if you take this number, this number of 18,000 rupees equivalent per month, we have 82%, Brazil has 23.5% at that level. Mexico has 22% at that level. We have 82% at that level. That's all I want to say, to show that, look, there's enormous suffering in this country. And it is your responsibility, because you're not going to get on a lifeboat and escape anywhere. Some of you may, but vast majority of us will be here. We have to build a better future for our country. And for that we have to understand that this country is in extreme distress and extreme poverty. I just use one indicator, but I can spend all afternoon with many other indicators. We are in extreme distress. So you have to start thinking for yourself, why are we in this condition? Why after 75 years? Leave alone China, even Peru has moved ahead. Mexico has moved ahead. Brazil has moved ahead. 60% of people in this country, if they were living in Mexico, would be earning more than 18,000 rupees a month. Simply because of the accident of their birth in this country, they're pushed into poverty. That's why Dr. Ambedkar always called them depressed people, because they're pushed down. Depressed means pushed down with a force. You remove the force, they will come up. They don't need to be uplifted. They don't need to be built up. You're just pushing them down. Why? Because they're fully capable of coming up. So you're pushing them down. So we are in extreme distress. What is poverty? We need to engage with the definition of poverty as a big issue. We need to challenge the definition of poverty. They're not eliminating poverty, they're defining poverty out of existence. But the lives of the people cannot be defined out of existence. It can only be materially improved. So how do we engage as lawyers, law students, with the suffering of 97% of the people of this country? There the Constitution gives us many instruments, some of which I referred to. Material resources of the community shall be so distributed as to best subserve the common good. That there shall be equality not only between individuals but also between groups. There are many provisions in the Directive Principles of State Policy, and also if you simply ensure, this leads me to my last and second point, if you simply ensure that the civil, political and economic rights of this 97% are not stripped away from them, their poverty will go away. They are being depressed because their rights are being taken away from them. And the Constitution gives you a framework to take away, remove the barriers to their enjoying the rights that they have under the Constitution, whether it's women, whether it's the poor, or whether it's the marginalized sections of society, tribals. They all have rights, and they're being equal rights, and they're being stripped of those rights. By what? So poverty is an area that is a struggle to end this extreme poverty and suffering. India is today home to the largest number of extremely poor people in the whole world. And it's deliberate, it's by design. This administration is failing, these programs are failing by design, because if they succeed, there will be social revolution in this country. So that's one area that I think when you study law, you must consider it that's how you re-engage with it. By engaging with poverty, you re-engage with the Constitution. Look at workers' rights. Workers have been stripped of their rights. All the tremendous gains that have been made, especially in my state. Kerala is what it is partly because there was a very powerful workers' movement. These rights are being stripped away. There's no reaction from lawyers or law students. We have disengaged from the social struggle means we have disengaged with the Constitution, because the Constitution is only a site of struggle. The moment you disengage with struggle, you've disengaged with the Constitution and you've contributed to the natural death of the Constitution. Rights of slum dwellers, rights of tribals. So many areas where rights are being stripped. So how can you use your legal education to understand these struggles, to engage in these struggles, use the Constitution to engage in these struggles. By that you will give lifeblood back to the Constitution. Another big issue is this whole, which I'll very briefly touch upon, is the whole issue of religion and caste. Interrelated issue. Communalism and casteism. They're very interrelated. Problem is that what is the root nature of this problem? Islamophobia is being spread throughout this country. I grew up in a Kerala where the single largest community is a Muslim community. It's the oldest Muslim community in the country. The first mosque was established during the lifetime of the Holy Prophet by a king who went and met the Prophet and embraced Islam. Cheraman Perumal, the oldest Muslim community in the country. And we've never had any communal conflict or any, there's huge love and respect for I grew up with that love and respect for Islam. And when I see a mosque or I see a symbol of Islam, for those who believe in God, I see that simply as a philosophical statement that if you believe in God, you must have the most expansive concept of God. Don't slice that concept. Don't say this God is only for me, this God is mine, this God is of this quality, that quality. God is the most expansive concept you can imagine, belongs to everyone, is the same for everyone. That's a very powerful philosophical statement. Whether I'm a believer, I'm not a believer, it's a very powerful philosophical statement. And we need that. And every time in Kerala I go and I see mosque, I say, yeah, when I see a mosque, that's what it's telling me. If you believe in God, do not constrict, slice this concept of God, have the biggest concept of God. If you don't believe in God, that's another issue altogether. But how did I pick up this idea? Because I grew up in Kerala, where we were always told, similarly Christianity, when I see a Christian church, I understand that Christian church's image stands for love, that God loves you. And God loves everyone. When I see Buddhism, I realize that it stands for non-violence. Jainism. When I see Sikhism, I know that Sikhism stands for syncretism, for combining a lot of these different streams together in a way that Islam does, and says, look, let's all bring these streams together and understand spirituality in its broadest sense. From that childhood, we are now in a childhood where we are being taught to hate. Why is this happening? Is the struggle in this diverse country for peaceful coexistence of people who have a different approach to faith and religion is a struggle for our survival, our very existence. We should not forget that Baghdad is only as far away from New Delhi as Trivandrum is. That Kabul is only as far away from New Delhi as Nagpur is. And this fire of internal violent slaughter is come very close to us. And if we don't fight it, and if it engulfs us, everything is gone. So how do we understand this? I'm not answering the question, but I'm raising, how do we understand poverty? How do we engage with the challenge of poverty? How do we understand this communal strife that is going on, caste strife that is going on in the country? And how do we engage with it? And what tools does the Constitution give us? So the Constitution gives us secularism as a part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Article 25 that gives right to religion only to individuals, not to groups, to every individual equally. So when you engage with this struggle, you engage with the Constitution and give it back its lifeblood. If you don't engage with these struggles, then you have no future, I have no future, none of us have a future. Now what is caste? I just want to end with that. I've been frustrated for many years to read Supreme Court and other judgments talking of casteless societies, progressive people saying caste is bad, don't talk about caste, it doesn't exist. But my life experience is very different, it actually exists. Dr. Ambedkar said that India will be ruled by a caste oligarchy. It is true, there are 4 communities that monopolize everything in this country for 75 years. And in each state, you've got 2-3 communities that monopolize everything, including in my state. But when we raise it, we are told, no, don't talk about caste, it doesn't exist. To my knowledge, there has not to my knowledge, there has never been this name I used to use earlier, but now it may be a little more controversial. There has never been a Supreme Court judge of India with the name Yadav. Is it because caste does not exist? Or because it exists? I'm choosing a large and powerful community, not a tiny marginal community. Irva community is a large community in Kerala, largest Hindu community. There's never been an Irva Supreme Court judge. And so on and so forth. So we know Dr. Ambedkar, as always, was right. He predicted it very correctly. There will be a caste oligarchy. But what is caste? I've been very frustrated that I'm not getting a clear definition of what is caste from any sociologist or anthropologist. Professor Gurye, Professor M.N. Srinivas, they all say, no, you can't really define it. And even though progressive thinkers who attack caste say, they don't define it. They just say, don't talk about it, it's bad, it doesn't exist. It's part of the superstructure or whatever. It is part of the, it may be, it may not be, but I want to know what is this thing that is not there in the superstructure, so that when I search the superstructure, I can know whether it's there or not. So I'm not getting it. So what I did was, what I've done is, recently, I'm a student of law like you. The only difference between you and me is that I've never left law school. I'm continuing to study law all my life. But as a student of law, I need to understand what caste is to engage with it from a legal point of view. So I've come up with a legal definition of caste. The legal definition of caste is just very simple. Caste is a system of government of a country. It's a political system. It's not a religious or social system. It's a system of government of a country. What does this system of government consist of? It has 3 main elements. The first element of the system of government is, under this system of government, no individual shall have any right. No individual shall have any right. Even if you are the most privileged individual, you have no right. Individual right. All your rights will come only from membership of a group, of the social group into which you are born. That's the second point. That all your rights shall come only from the social group into which you are born. That's the second system. I'm looking at it as a lawyer because I'm interested in the system of a system of government is a system by which you allocate rights, establish rights, take away rights, define rights. That's the medium through which government exists. Rights and privileges, liabilities and disabilities. That's why the Evidence Act defines a fact in issue, which is you can only have evidence on relevant facts and facts in issue. And a fact in issue is defined as a fact from which the existence, non-existent, nature or existence, non-existence, nature or extent of right, liability or disability necessarily follows. So ultimately the state for us is a mechanism through which rights, liabilities and rights, privileges, rights and disabilities are given and taken away. So that's a form of government. So first of all, this caste system is a system of governance. It first says no individual shall have rights. Second, it says all your rights and privileges and liabilities and disabilities shall come from the social group into which you are born. The community, let's call it the community. This is not yet the caste system. It's a social system. Everywhere in the world there are social groups. And you are born into you are born into parents, and the parents may or may not be members of a social group. Typically they are, and then you are members of that social group. This is the second point. The third point is that this is the caste system. All the social groups in the country are categorized into 5 categories. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. If you are in 1 and 2, you have huge set of rights and privileges. Huge protection of your rights and privileges. All your rights and privileges are basically protected if you are in 1 and 2. 3, most of it is protected, not all, little less. 4, lot is protected, but much less. But 1, 2, 3, 4 have rights and privileges arising from their membership, not as individuals, protected. But if you are thrown out of that category, your rights are gone. So in Kerala, there's a horrible tradition where even little girls or boys, if they violated the caste rules of the Nambudiri families, they would be taken to their house and they would be put out and the door would be closed, and then that girl doesn't exist anymore as a human being. So why? Because she's out of the group. No individual rights. Even in slavery, the privileged whites always, they were also thrown out or hanged or punished and all that, but they were always had membership of the white race. They could not be expelled from that unless they had mixed blood or something like that. So this is unique. So you get categorized into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if your community gets categorized into number 5, you have absolutely no rights. All your rights are stripped away. All your rights. That's number 5 category. And most of us are in number 5, including the religious minorities. Because only those who are born into communities that are categorized as 1, 2, 3, 4, only they have rights. And if you're a religious minority, you're not born into 1, 2, 3, 4, you're also category 5. If you're in category 5, you are with the begging bowl. You have no rights. This categorization system, according to me, is the caste system. It's a Jati Varna system. Why do I say that? Because Jati, Narayana Guru, great scholar of Sanskrit and so on, he defined Jati as Janma Riti, method of birth. Jan plus Katin, Janma Riti. So Jati means Janma Riti. And he says, he wrote somewhere that everyone in the world knows that human beings have only one Janma Riti. We are all born the same way. Woman delivers us. It's not that some of us are born with our father laying an egg and the egg hatching. Right? We are all born the same way. So we have only one Jati. But the Rig Veda Purusha Sukta says there are 4 methods of birth. And the 5th doesn't exist, so people are outside it. That's 5th category. And therefore 4 Jatis are created, and Varna is the Varnanam or description of the status and rights and responsibilities of these 4 Jatis. So this is the Jati Varna system. That Jati Varna creates political categories. Why do I say political? Because its purpose is to strip people of civil, political and economic rights. Now if you say according to your religion you must touch your right nostril with your left hand, I don't care. That's up to you. I respect all of that. It doesn't affect me. But the moment you touch civil, political and economic rights, it becomes a constitutional issue, it becomes a legal issue, it is a political issue. So the caste system is a system to deprive, to vest and divest people of civil, political and economic rights by categorizing their social groups into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories. That's why Dr. Ambedkar says annihilate this categorization system. We have nothing against Nambudiri, Iyer, Iyengar. They're all communities. There's no, whether it's Pulaya, Paraya, whatever it is, they're all communities. There's no hierarchy there. The hierarchy comes in this categorization. So if someone tells me I'm from Chitpavan community, I have only love for them. You know, all communities have good and bad things, and we have no problem with any community. But don't tell me you're a Brahmin. Who made a Nambudiri a Brahmin? Is there any Veda or Shastra that says Nambudiri is a Brahmin? Or Chitpavan is a Brahmin? Or Iyer is a Brahmin? Or Iyengar is a Brahmin? Where is it written in the Rig Veda? They said there are these 4 categories. But who classifies? They themselves categorize themselves. Tomorrow if this Nambudiri or Chitpavan is categorized as number 5, where will their power be? Or 4. Imagine if all the Shankaracharyas get together and say Nambudiris are Shudras, category 4. What will happen to their power? So the creation of the category and the classification system, that's a caste system. And that's political, it's human. It has a religious justification, which they themselves say is a later imposition into the Rig Veda. May be right because it's political in nature. It may not be part of the original religious ideas. I have nothing against the original religious theological ideas in Zen Avastha or Rig Veda. And it's their religion. They're entitled to believe in it. They should not tell me it's my religion, but they're fully entitled to believe in it. But this system now, this is why they want to exterminate. I'm not necessarily saying physically liquidate, but exterminate the minority religions in category 5. Because the minority religions theology rejects this categorization completely. Says all human beings are created equal. They're all children of God. Individual has rights. God loves you. Very dangerous theology. Ramakrishna Mission on their website identified these threats to Vedanta. The Islamic idea of social equality, of brotherhood as challenges to Vedanta. The Western ideas of open society believing in freedom and liberty as challenge to Vedanta. The idea of a God, a savior God that is on the side of the sick and the poor and the downtrodden as a challenge to Vedanta. Very moderate organization like Ramakrishna Mission said this in their website. So, just to, I'm at the end of this, at 1 o'clock, so I'm at the end of this. So, let me just say, can you hear me at the back? No, sir. Yeah? No. 1 minute. Dr. Ambedkar's genius. What does he do in the Constitution? Remember the first characteristic of this political system of governance called the Varna system. Varna system is a political system of governance, intended to strip people or protect rights or strip people of rights. Right? What does the Constitution do? First principle is no individual rights. What does Dr. Ambedkar engineer this, the Constitution to do with the support of everyone? Every single person, regardless of your background, gender, anything, every single person is given individual rights. That is a massive, massive attack on the caste system. The caste system does not recognize individuals. What does the constitution do? It recognizes individuals and puts the institution in the caste political, Varna political system. At the top are these 4 categories, 5 categories. 5 is is a non-category. The 4 categories are at the top. Here, constitution puts the individual at the top. Very significant. Second, the constitution gives you freedom of association, which means you do not have to be a member of an association simply because you were born, of a group simply because you were born into it. It makes the basis of existence of the group not birth, but freedom of association, which means you cannot be forced to be a part of any group. Very big revolutionary change, which we are still not absorbing or understanding. I may be born into X community, my parents may belong to X community, I'm born into X community, I can say, sorry, I don't like this community, I don't want to be part of it. I can join any other community that would welcome me. It's not a question of conversion, it's a question of joining a community. My freedom of association. Very big revolutionary change. So first is individual rights. Second is freedom of association and the liberating people from being compelled to be part of the community into which you're born. Massive change. Third, he abolishes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 completely. Constitution does not recognize Varna. What does the Supreme Court do? It keeps on praising Varna. Judgment after judgment. Read the recent judgment of on this Chennai Devinder Singh judgment. Justice, one of the judges has several pages of praise for the Varna. This has happened across the time. Varna is laudable. Varna brings the best out of everyone is what the Supreme Court actually said in one of its judgments. I'm not getting into that, but so the Constitution does not recognize the Varna system. More importantly, the Constitution takes away group rights of 1, 2, 3, 4 completely. So today no one can walk in here and say, I'm category 1, please sit there, I will sit here. A century ago it may have been possible, but today it's not. Group rights have been taken away completely. Instead, those communities who are members, communities, not castes, but communities who are categorized into category 5, the Constitution gives them group rights. So that their rights are restored to them with double insurance, so that they can have solidarity in protecting their individual rights as groups, as a protective shield of their rights. Group rights are also given to them. Who? ST, SC, ST including self-governance, SC, minorities, religious minorities, and backward classes. So imagine how the Constitution turns this Varna system on its head. It gives individual rights. It takes away group rights of 1, 2, 3, 4. And it gives group rights to social groups that were previously categorized in group number 5. And it liberates people from mandatory being forced into the communities that you belong. This is Constitution versus Varna system. Varnocracy versus democracy. This is the battle. Because this oligarchy wants to restore the system of government called the Varna system, which cannot coexist with this constitutional democracy, because it totally destroys it. So it's what is going on at the core in this struggle, one of the struggles going on in this country, is the question of what kind of form of government do we want? Do we want a Varnocracy, a Varna form of government, or a democracy, a people's form of ruled form of government? We cannot have both. And if we don't have democracy, vast majority of these people go back to being categorized in category 5, we are all finished. So I've given you two examples. One is poverty and workers' rights. The other is understanding the social structure, understanding the nature of caste as a political system to vest and take away civil, political and economic rights. And as lawyers, it is our responsibility to annihilate the system and to protect and safeguard all the civil, political and economic rights that the Constitution recognizes for every one of us. And lastly, Dr. Ambedkar had emphasized from 1930 in the Roundtable Conference that what we need to neutralize this oligarchy is representative government, due and adequate representation of all communities, because he wanted to strengthen communities of the category 5 people as a shield to protect their individual rights through their equal representation, due and adequate representation in legislature, judiciary and executive. Reservation is not the issue, it's representation. I argued before the Supreme Court in EWS, I'm not here asking for reservation, I'm here asking for representation. Due and adequate representation of all communities, power sharing between all the communities, because only when everyone is represented around the table, given our diversity, will we be able to bring these struggles onto the tables of the Supreme Court, the Parliament and the Executive, and hear everyone and develop a consensus that is acceptable to everyone, and that consensus should become our law and our reflected in our, and should be reflected in our judgment. So to sum up, what I'm saying is that we must re-engage with the Constitution, and the Constitution is a site of struggle which keeps the social conflicts and struggles going on in our country for ages alive, gives space for them, and gives common people like us the opportunity to engage in the struggle without becoming a soldier or engaging violently in it. It gives us a chance to engage in it, in these struggles, in a peaceful system. And we must, and because we are not engaging in it, the Constitution has de facto become irrelevant, confined to the backside of a textbook, which is unread by everyone. But if you want to bring it to life, then we must engage in the struggles, because then we will see how the Constitution is so useful to help us to secure and build a new future, as envisaged in the preamble, where we expressed, you and I and our forefathers and foremothers expressed the resolve to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and that is their commitment, and we shall not rest unless we realize their dream. And we shall be, all you young people here must take this pledge in your mind, that you shall be the last generation to live under this categorization system called Varna, where human beings are categorized into 5 categories and stripped of their rights. The next generation should never be able to have to live under the burden of this political system which strips them of their rights. And this should be, I think, a way, this should give us, this should help us to understand the urgency of the struggle. It cannot wait. It must be, we must engage with the struggle right now. And whether it comes into your classroom, it won't. But beyond and outside the classroom, you must use your knowledge of law and the opportunity of legal education to engage in these struggles. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to take any questions.